Yo, what's going on? You are in tune with One More Thing. And I always say this is a very special episode because it always is, because every interview that I ever do is very special. But this particular one with Scartip is special for a plethora of reasons, mainly because he's lying down in a bath right now. But for reasons that we'll get to as the conversation progresses, but also because for me, this is a really unusual challenge. Scartip, Michael, is a friend first and foremost, and then a creative collaborator and an artist on One More Thing. We've tried to do interviews, we've done little bits and bobs over the years, but generally I've passed on the duty of interviewing to other people because I feel like I know you too well. I don't know how to interview friends. I think it's very easy to interview someone you don't know very much about because there's all sorts of obvious questions. With in this set of circumstances, this is really unusual, but we've set ourselves a little bit of a context, a little bit of boundaries in order to do this interview really well. I think it's an interesting challenge for me as a journalist, and just to fill anybody who's watching this in, because Scartip is a name that regularly appears on One More Thing and always will. We met through completely industry circumstances. He'd read a news report that I'd written about a conference that was going on in Prague that was associated with Let It Roll. I was going to be talking there. He's an aspiring producer who already had releases out at the time, responded to that news article, went out there on his own. We met. I realized he was on his own. It's like, no, hang out with us. We spent the time at Let It Roll together. And from that moment on, in July or August 2017, we've remained really close friends ever since. On a personal note, I find it very easy to make acquaintances. I find it very difficult to make friends and actually trust people. And I think I would say, Michael, this is my bit where I bring you into the conversation because it's really weird when you're sitting there and someone's talking about you and you're thinking, okay, this is all a bit mad. Yeah, I think like you are the most consistent and solid kind of reliable figure of friend who I've made in the industry in my career. Yeah, I can think of like maybe one or two other people who I'm that close with and trust and buzz off the company off and get inspired by. I hope that that feeling is mutual. I'm pretty sure it is. But yeah, like yeah, we've made friends through this musical journey, haven't we? Really?
We have indeed, yeah, and it's very strange and bizarre to hear you call me Michael. Because
Yeah,
if
that's
we
about the
are,
third time in my life that I've ever
yeah.
done that. Really.
So no, but no, it's no. The feeling is absolutely reciprocated, and that no, I appreciate the kind words. And as you say, it's very easy to make acquaintances, and that's obviously not being derogatory to the word acquaintance or anyone that you do meet, because there's time is so short to make real, genuine connections. So yeah, the
Yeah,
feeling is
and
very much the same, mate.
I think as adults as well, it's harder and harder. You make
Yes.
friends quite easily as teenagers, and when you're in certain circumstances like school or perhaps university, if you go, or your early jobs, all of these type of things, or partying. But the older you get, and the more stuck in your own esoteric ways, perhaps I think as adults, I think it's harder to find people who you think, yeah, we see eye to eye on things. We see eye to eye on enough things for us to share common kind of ground as friends, but also coming from different perspectives as well, because you don't just want a bunch of friends who just completely agree with you on absolutely everything. So,
Well, yeah, no, we tried to say we weren't going to do this and go off on these sort of tangent conversations, which we do away from interview. But no, you're right. As you get older, I think when you're younger, whether that's in the teens or early 20s, you're still trying to, discover yourself, and you're quite more open and susceptible to, people and their ways. But when you start to say, you do get more specialist and in your I don't know where I'm going with this, but you just become a bit more defined, don't you, as the older you get? So it's very hard. It's not to say you can't make friends when you're older. I have every intention of making friends until I'm actually able to, still speak and stand. But yeah, it's a lot more harder the older you get. Just time as well. Time is very scarce, which I think is half the battle.
definitely, definitely. Time is too scarce. So let's not waste any more time.
Yes.
First of all, let's establish why you're in a bath before we get to the kind of structure of the interview. And we're dropping a release. This is all
Yes.
related to a release that at this very stage, now, the week before release, nobody really knows besides one or two people and anybody who's had the promo, any of the kind of DJs who've been on the receiving end of the promo. No one knows that an EP of yours is going to drop Your last EP came out 7 months ago in September on One More Thing, your last EP on One More Thing. And in that time in between, things have gone incredibly stratospheric for you, kind of off the back of that EP, but just because of the back of all of the work that you've been doing in your amazing music. So we're going to kind of recap on that, but we're dropping this EP, which was actually going to come out much later on in the year, but we've decided to push it forward because of all of the momentum, and we just want to get this music out there. The
Yeah.
EP is called Flesh.
Mhm.
I don't think it would have been appropriate to ask you to do the interview in just your bare birthday suit flesh, but another track, the second track on EP, is called Bats, which is
Yes.
you're there with a shower as a microphone.
Hence the setting in the back. Yeah, so the EP is called Flesh, and I suppose it was between Flesh or Bats, which would have been the title track, but because they're both my sort of favourites on it. But there's also a track called Derby, which is homage to where I'm from. I'm not based in Derby now. I'm based in the Greater Manchester area, and but there's also Ibsy, which is a bit of a nod to an old friend of mine, Egyptian friend called Ibrahim, who was a bit of a weirdo. So I've sampled, as you know, I've take my microphone around and I record a lot of Foley, and in that track there's him being weird on it. And what was there's a fifth track, Nightshade, which
Nightshade.
is which because again I've sort of gone into this left field bass territory now, which is where I'm established. Because for years I was just a drum and bass producer, and I just sort of was just that one tunnel drum and bass. Might have made the odd half-time tune here and there and thought it was quite edgy, but now I think that's just the way it is. I consider myself a left field bass artist, but I still keep a few toes in that drum and bass world because that was my background. That's where I'm from, and I still know loads about it now. I'm probably not as finger on the pulse as say if I would have been when I was 25 or a bit younger, because you're just generally a bit more excited about it than say like an artist like Gifter, who just, for example, who's just on it, on it, on it. Like
Oh
that
my
probably would
God,
have been
yeah.
me like 10 years ago. But yeah, so that's a bit of an encapsulation of the EP. It's called Flesh, not for any sort of weird, profound reason. It's literally because I used a plugin, a native instruments plugin called Flesh, which is the arpeggiator. That's it. I'd love to say it was based on some sort of more
You
deeper kind of reason. We could make a
you do
reason.
have a knack. You do have a knack of coming up with really funny or interesting titles or strange non sequiturs, I think they're called, where it could be like the end of a kind of sentence or the start of a story. And you do seem to pick these kind of obtuse track titles throughout all of your career, I think, really in that way. But that's the most boring story
I
behind
know
any
it
of
is,
an
isn't it?
EP I've
But
heard.
I suppose the kind of the twist on that is it sounds like it should be more, but it's actually quite not. So
Less.
which is yeah, it's like Flesh was it's just named after an instrument. Um, but yeah,
But
there's way more, as you said, there's way more interesting track titles that I've come up with over the years, which I could probably think about. But yeah, that's the EP.
hmm. I
Which
think it's
and,
your
and
boldest EP. I think it's your biggest statement. I mean, this year so far, we've had some
okay,
really, really interesting things from you, like Cans and Hooves and stuff
yes,
like that. But I think as a body of work, as we did with the What Have You Done EP, this is definitely the most kind of far out or extreme examples of what Scartip can sound like at the moment, really, in terms of the most kind of generous EP in terms of these sounds, following the Hypercolour one, really, in terms of like showing so many more sides to your sound and your creative vision.
yeah, yeah. It's which kind of feels. It's interesting you saying that. It's not to say that I'm quite nonchalant with this release, but I think just purely because of the speed that we put it together and the almost experimental nature of the promotion, which is essentially we haven't promoted it really,
Yeah.
which was hot, which was it's not like I mean that could backfire, who knows? But like it's also just to see how it's going to land without any real promotion. Because with What Have You Done, for example, that was a good way to sort of experiment with like 2 weeks really hard promo and this and that. Whereas this is just like we're talking about it now because we're talking retrospectively, but this is obviously recorded before. But we're only going to do like a teaser and then just an announcement and then see how that goes. As I say, yeah, it might not land, but if I'm still happy with putting it out there on one more thing, and as you
Well, it
say,
has landed though, because this, let's just go through
I
some of the
suppose, yeah,
people who've given us. So we put it out on promo. This is something that we didn't do with the previous EP, and I really like this for anybody kind of watching who's interested in the
technically we
label's
did.
work. And
Which, sorry to interrupt there, but technically
hmm?
we did with What Have You Done? But there's also, and I suppose we can elaborate on
Oh, of
that.
course we did. Yes, yes, yeah. No, we'll get to that in a
Yeah,
moment, really, won't we? Because I imagine that's one of the examples you've had. So, and when we've had, I'm looking at a promo sheet here. We've got, so obviously, I mean, I don't like, because people always see it and make jokes like downloading for Andy C and stuff like that. But I mean, downloading for Marco Carola. Marco Carola is absolutely huge and has been a humongous Italian techno artist since for as long as I've been writing about music, as far as he's really well. The person who downloaded it seemed to be interested in Flash. Don Diablo
yeah,
downloaded for Don. Richie Hawtin, Anthony Papa. These are names that if you've come from a drum and bass world, you might even not be totally aware of, but certainly from
yeah,
like somebody who's into progressive house and techno, these are humongous names to know that music that we're releasing is now on their USB and potentially in their sets. It's really exciting. CC, three of the tracks have been downloaded on behalf of DJ EZ.
I know, yeah.
Yeah, Richie Hawtin. I mean, these are all incredible names. Now, I don't know how much of that then feeds into the success of the release, but I've been getting it out to the DJs. The DJs are the most important conduits in terms of dance
Pacemakers.
music. Yeah. So that's the kind of promo that we've done. We made sure that it's at least on the radar of people. And then, yeah, it is a case of kind of seeing what people's reactions are like, seeing kind of how people respond to just a surprise release in that type of way. And yeah, I mean, it's exciting, it's scary, but it's also now. I mean, you would know this a lot more than me, having released music for 10 years. Release day is usually a bit of an anticlimax, isn't
Yeah,
it?
yeah, yeah. I actually, so with the Hypercolour one, which is a good example.
Yeah, because
Um,
everybody was going tits for cans and hooves in the build up to that, wasn't it? Like, you know, there was
yeah,
a
and that
lot of
was,
heat.
yeah, we could maybe sort of talk a bit about that and the relationship I've formed as a result of, but yeah, that was a great example, and I'm sure other artists get this. It's like you do all this promo run, and then you get it out to, as you said, the tastemakers, and you do your own little bits as an artist and the label, or you should be doing at least something. And then when it comes to it, it's like, oh, right, it's out now. It's like, great.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I guess that's anything. It's like whenever you're, working towards a goal or an aim, it's always that classic thing, whether it's a music release or just a personal goal. It's like you get there and it's like, all right, cool, on to the next thing then, But it's not to discredit it, but yeah, it's
It's a strange time, and I use this example all the time, and I always feel like I'm name dropping. But I had a call. It was the day that I released Fantasy's book that me and Fantasy had spent 18 months working on, off and on.
mm,
Crust just happened to call me on that day, and I was a bit despondent because I thought the whole world was going to stop and everyone was going to buy the book or at least post about it or sing a song or I don't know, sit in the bathtub to celebrate this. But no, people just went on about their daily lives as they always do, like I do when my friends drop stuff as well. You know, you might give a heart or you might go and support it, but
yeah,
generally speaking, everybody's lives carry on. And Crust
yeah,
picked
yeah,
up on. He was like, "You all right, bruv?" I was like, well, I don't know. We dropped a book today and fuck all's happened. Like, I don't feel any different. I thought that, I don't know. I don't even know what I'm looking for here. And he's like, mate, it's the long game. You don't know. Like, it's like someone might pick that book up in 10 years' time and go,
yeah.
oh my God, and get in touch with you. It's like, that's out in the universe. And you just need to move on and move on to whatever else is fulfilling you. Don't think about it. You've done your bit. It's now in the hands of the world. And it was
Yes,
like, or the universe. And it was like, wow, okay. And now that's what I say to every artist that I ever release with, especially with Lake Wade's album, because I was an album. And it's like, mate, we've done all of our posts. Turn your phone off for the day. We cannot do anything more. Anything more that you do will be counterproductive. The algorithms almost sense that you're needy. And it's
yeah.
like the more and more you post about it, the diminishing returns, the more the returns will become diminished.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, and there's that as well as like on release day. If we're specifically talking about the music, it's like
Mm.
let's not delude ourselves. Especially if it's like a Friday, you're going up against tens of thousands, maybe over different parts of music, and they're all doing that thing. And just celebrate or at least acknowledge the fact that you put something out there into the world, as you say, whether you're looking at that from, a bit more of a spiritual angle or just like a literal angle. It's just like it's out there. We've created something. We've done a thing, and it's out there. That's cool in itself, or at least it should be. But I know I do get that, and it's just like the disappointment. But just just accept how cool it is that you've created something. That's something to be. That's a beauty in itself. No, I don't know if I'm getting a bit too weird here,
No,
but
you are
yeah,
completely right. You are completely right. And it's more than what a lot of other people will only get to the idea of wanting to do that, but not
yeah,
go through
exactly.
because they haven't done the discipline of the art form in terms of kind of crafting the music or put themselves out there. They've been too scared to put themselves out there in a way, really. And I
Yeah,
think that's absolutely right, really. It's kind of that thing. And I mean, we've done like part of this interview now is I want to kind of I've asked you to prepare a few moments of our journey because we've done lots of cool things. We've created lots of cool
right.
things since 2017. And I mean, when I first met you, I came away from that thinking, like, oh, maybe I could manage you. Like, maybe, yeah, maybe that's the thing. And I remember, like, I still have the email in my inbox of like a proposal to you, basically. Like,
Yeah, yeah,
I really think I could manage you, and maybe in the future that might still happen because I am talking to someone. I am kind of partly managing Lakeway at the moment, and it's like, okay, well, maybe I can manage other people's lives better than I can manage my own life. I don't know. But I still remember coming away from thinking like, wow, I've made a wicked connection. And I remember saying to you, I was setting you tasks like asking you to kind of do different genre bootlegs and stuff. We
yeah,
made the Mr. Vazo bootleg. And these kind of things, like, this is how long this kind of creative relationship has been. Like a lot of these things that we were talking about then are kind of coming into fruition now in a
yeah,
strange way, really. So I've got my kind of favorite moments, and I'm wondering how many of them overlap with yours. So for now, this part of the interview, because I think this will help us keep away from just it will either send us right into flying off into mad tangents chatter, or
yes.
it will keep us very structured and focused. But I'd like to know your highlights of our creative journey so far, really, and then I hope we
I'll,
can, kind of find out your experiences as an artist and how that's been for you.
highlights of our creative journey. Well, I mean, I'll kind of just start with a little bit of a piggyback off yours, which is, I guess, the genesis of Scartip and I, which was that time. But and I guess really the start of it, because that was really me going out there off the back of your article
Mm,
on UKF, which was and that was like I was kind of a bit starry eyed by it all because there was I can't remember who was on it, but there's always talks by like Icicle and New York hosting, and I just remember being like, wow, all my heroes are here, they're talking, and they're normal, they're people, they're within yards away from me. But I'll always forget from a anecdotal point of view that Mackie G tour blasting out and giving everyone tinnitus, and I remember briefly speaking to Transit Mafia, James, because
yes.
I used to DJ at Detonate years ago for a little bit. Before a friend of mine, how you get a plus one, and a
Yeah.
friend of mine came in the sound booth like drunk to the eyeballs and really annoyed and I never got a gig again. But anyway, that's
Oh
irrelevant.
no.
Yeah, be careful who you invite in your plus ones is my advice
Yes.
on that. But anyway, yeah. So talking to him, and then that Mackie G just like literally burst everyone's eardrums. So that was quite funny. But yeah, that was, and I guess that was a kind of a baptism in how to conduct yourself professionally. I
Yeah.
guess. Although as I say, I'm sure we're all guilty of a few incidents where we've not been professional when we should have been in a musical setting. But hey ho. But yeah, that was the first of it. I'd say another part was the DMB Awards, which you kindly invited me to. Um,
Oh, this was one of the last big live ones, wasn't it, in
yeah,
Electric Brixton? And we went for a meal and stuff before, didn't we, with some people and things, and then went there. Did we go for a meal before, or was that a separate time?
no, we did. We went for
Yeah,
a
we
burger
did.
before, I believe,
That's it. Yeah,
with
yeah, yeah.
someone who you knew, who I can't remember. But again, it was kind of a bit of a to kind of sort of go a little bit onto the, what I was talking about a moment ago, the DMV Awards, because I remember just sort of being quite in awe of, because you were talking to this, I can't remember who the guy was now, but it was to do with an article. It was all like, and I was just like, wow, that's really cool. Like, I'm just some like artist making bedroom music, on the outskirts of Derby. I was all very naive to it all. And I was just, yeah, being quite in awe of what was going on.
I
And,
think that's quite cool. I think that's like what that highlights for me is how quick that switch is from being an amateur. to being part of the industry and being accepted as part of the industry. And what I love about the music industry and why I will always be part of the music industry over any other creative industry is there is so much more understanding of people's mistakes or people's not so much mistakes, but not like there's room to not be as quite as professional and like really really efficient. Like you can be this kind of creative individual who doesn't feel like you fit in, but then
Hmm.
when you're working with certain people and they'll bring you onto projects and suddenly that door's open and you're just going in and out of those worlds.
Hmm.
And it's like, when I started working on a magazine, for example, like it's like suddenly, like, there was nothing else, there was no other experience. It's just like, right, okay, now I have this title of staff writer. I am part of the industry and people accept you for that. And they will trust you with that and they will talk to you with that, whether you've been involved for 6 months or 6 years. The people I mentor, like kind of throwing them into situations and stuff. And it's like, no, you're part of the industry now. And people
Yeah,
were like,
yeah,
there's an acceptance, like there's you don't have to pass a test, you don't have to fill in a form or be like kind of studied or like if you fit, if you're making the wicked music or you're writing articles, you're contributing or you're doing amazing music that you ask, like come on board. People, but nobody will be like, well, I'm not going to talk to you because you're a bedroom producer. It's like, all right, this is Dave's mate, he's making music as well, cool, right, I'm going to share the same stories with you. And
hmm,
I find that, I mean, obviously, dance music is very clicky and there's all sorts of egos and idiots. By
yeah,
and large, though, certainly within our niche fields of the more stranger kind of sides of music where we're clearly not in this for big commercial hits,
hmm,
there are other strange people, or not so much strange, there are other people who are just like, oh, right, okay, yeah, cool. And if you're on the same wavelength, whether you have just put out one remix or, like I say, you've been established for ages, you're accepted. And I think
yeah,
that's the beauty of like, people try and aspire to be in with something, but it's just when you're doing is when you're kind of included in that type
yeah,
of way. It's really cool that you've remembered that awards really in that
yeah.
way.
You don't remember it at the time as well. I think you don't realise it's happening in the time of these kind of things. But yeah, I suppose professionally speaking, and this, I guess, this was a good test of our not friendship, not a test, but like when I was working at Virtuoso, which was actually a music industry job, and you came
Yeah.
to host a session because that then did encroach on the friendship because we were actually being right. I'm part of a business that's actually paying you now for work. It's like,
Yeah.
that could have been because I remember you said before, as it's like sometimes when if people are doing stuff for free, it's okay, but then as soon as money's involved, it's like right. Well, that does actually change the dynamic a little bit because you're actually paying. So that's where I'm going with that. But that was great. I had a great time with that, and it was brilliant. We had some pizza before. I don't want to speak derogatory about, obviously that whole experience with Virtuoso because, you know how that ended. Let's
Yeah,
not
but
go
I don't
there.
think that matters. Like
No, it
at that
doesn't.
very moment, you were interviewing me, and I thought
Yeah,
that was great. Like you were hosting, so I was, yeah, we our roles had reversed in that type of way, and it was terrifying. I mean, anybody who doesn't know what the virtuoso kind of sessions that you were hosting were for an artist, and like you'd have people like Elijah and Andy
yeah.
C and stuff like that doing the same thing.
Yoris Horn. There was like Flavor D came on one. There was
Wow.
Sam Finger, Alex Perez, Amy Jane. There was some like Judy from Fabric, and I was involved in putting on these live sessions, these industry sessions, in this really kind of at the time futuristic room with all these screens and all these
It's
faces.
mad.
It was a beautiful time.
I think
And
if I've
professionally,
still got the photo, I will like, as this interview, like while people are watching this, hopefully there's some pictures of this coming up, but it was mad to be faced with like, I think it was a row of like what, 24 screens, 30
there was
screens.
30. No, there was. I think it was 32 screens, and it was kind of built. The guys they did the future DJs thing, and it was built off the back of lockdown, and they got a lot of funding, and it was great, and it was very impressive at the time. And
It
yeah,
was like a bad person's lair. It was like an evil person's lair in a film where they've got the red button and they're gonna nuke somewhere. And
yeah,
all of the countries, you've got like Japan in the corner going, no, 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 no. And you've got America in the
yeah,
other corner, like, "Bleh," like that. And I'm just about to press the button, or you're just about like that's how it felt being like this high-tech, futuristic kind of like
yeah,
bad guy lair. But yeah,
yeah,
I mean, it was mad. And what was really cool about that is like suddenly you were talking about people who I'd known through my work in magazines for 20 odd years, and you're like kind of, you're name dropping them, and it's like, wow, you know that person, like these are like this is where the worlds had kind of overlapped in quite a
Yeah,
crazy way. And actually led to there was somebody who you had on board who did a promo campaign for the What Have You Done EP, because he knew you and he'd met you on that, and he's known me for years. Dean from Dispersion PR, who used to manage people like Ben Sims and stuff like that.
yeah.
Incredibly well versed and like experienced PR. He did the promo campaign on the last EP, which might even take us to your next highlight of our journey, or if not one of your highlights, really.
There's just one little stepping stone before that. I've never met
Yeah.
Dean actually, by the way. But yeah, the one before that, we'll get to that. Is I could have spoke about loads. There's block to block sessions as well, but one that I did want to mention, which was Amsterdam Vision, because the reason I wanted to mention that was because it was kind of like that's how I kind of. I suppose this wasn't the intention, but talking about getting just being in the mix and talking to industry people, because we actually sat down with Yap. Um, and he met me and we spoke, and obviously that has led to, in consequence, in some myriad of ways, the vision release that I've recently had on the Mission EP. But that was so funny, and that was a great time. And I was so drunk. I actually did I tell you I bent the knee to Nick, who's now SleepNet, who's now Ring Nord. Probably Game of Thrones style. I was waiting for
Yes.
you outside the club at like 4 a.m. and Nick was leaving with his partner, wife, I guess, and yeah, and they're really tall, aren't they, Dutch people? Or maybe I'm just really small, but I remember Nick's like really tall. And I
He's
remember
very
just
tall.
bending the knee and just being like, put like really sort of like, heads down, really kind of like, and just like, Nick, I just love everything that you've done. Thank you. It was like kind of like a thank you. I remember it being quite genuine though. Like, obviously, I was probably satirical in my head, but like I remember it being very serious and just being like, as if I am bending the knee to the king.
Brilliant.
Yeah, but that was, but again, that was only like a flash pan. It was like 24 hours. I landed. You're like, right, we're going to go for dinner with Noisia. In my head, I was like having these ideas, not a candlelit dinner, but I think it was just going to be like us. But there was like 30. But I met Yam, and that was so, and it was so funny. It was brilliant, wasn't it? That whole.
And then we went and did an interview, and these are the type of interviews that we've done before. And this has been going really well and really smoothly. We've kept on track so far, but the normal things we've done are what we did on the Sunday morning then, which is we did a bit of an interview outside a torture museum. And
Yeah, yeah,
then went round filming you in the torture museum, which is much more in the kind of spirit of what we would do as kind of creative friends just looking to do something funny and
yeah,
unusual. But that was, and I mean that's really poignant for me because that was pretty much exactly 3 years ago, just before I was setting up one more thing. And I was like, right, I'm going to go to Amsterdam. I'm going to film as many people as possible, spread the word about one more thing, go to Noisia's last ever Noisia invites in
yeah.
Amsterdam.
Oh, nice.
And that was wild and definitely a kind of another level in our kind of in our missions and our adventures together and stuff like
Yeah.
that, wasn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. I
Definitely.
guess there's other things I could mention here. I mean, all the block to blocks that we've done, even though, because again, finding it not quite funny, because I don't want to feel like we're taking the pee, but like obviously block to blocks quite a serious young drum and bass energy, and then we just turn up and just that's the kind of start. And this we've spoke about this, but like this whole DJ journey, like I'm doing these data transmission series, and it's not nothing unique. I don't want to say like I'm just sort of like a pioneer, but really going westward on like, starting off with some sort of Bradley Zero type 110 BPM, really kind of tunes, and then playing some sort of like, disco Brazilian sort of like funk, so and then going into Paranoid London, like really acid techno, and then taking some, we started doing all that on these block to blocks. Just kind of messing around, but again, all in this faith of experimenting. And so that's kind of a bit of another little pebble across into the pond of where I'm getting to. But
I think I
yeah,
still remember. I am going to stop you there. We are
yeah,
blatantly going to go over time here because there's
all
otherwise
right,
it's 2 minutes. But fuck the time, like
yeah,
because
yeah,
I think these are really interesting points. I still remember the conversation because I wanted to do something really different with you. I'd only just got back into DJing, And I said about kind of pulling different things and like, kind of being open-minded about the tempo. And I remember your question was like, how different do you want to go? I was like, whatever you want to play, whatever you want to play. And like, that's my version of that was just going to 100 BPM really. And I always want to start really slow. Your version of that was, yeah, picking out world music and stuff and
Yeah,
doing the challenges. I love it when you stop and you kind of play one of these. It's like, how the hell am I going to mix out of this? And most of the times, I mean, there was like an Africa, it was William Onyeabor, and then
yeah.
I was mixing in a Mind of a Dragon loop underneath it. Yeah, and oh my God, I can't remember his fucking name. Oh, Mr. Block the Block. Oh my God, he's on
Jack
the tip of my
Banner,
tongue.
Jack
But yeah,
Banner, on the tip of the
came
road.
in, yeah, in a black robe and gave us a rose. Like I don't know anybody else who's
Oh,
ever been
surreal.
given a rose on block to block. But it was that like the minute we started mixing together, and now having done a lot of B2Bs with lots of DJs, it doesn't always work like that. There is like,
Huh?
there's a telepathy between certain DJs, and
Yeah,
you and I have that, and we
yeah,
can play each other like we could leave each other with any tune and know that we'd be capable technically, or we've got the right tunes on our USB to get out of that mix really in that way. And I mean that for me, like my highlights of our journey, that's been one of them because it's
yeah.
really like I do like mixing on my own. I love mixing on my own, but like to mix with somebody and go, oh, you've got that, or all right, you mix like that. Oh, I wouldn't do that. Wow, that was sick. And just I really also like the way that we're so very different, but also complementary. Like,
We do mix
you're
differently.
Hmm?
We do DJ very differently because I
Yeah,
never I rarely touch. Although, funnily enough, I have since watching you do it. But I'm historically, and maybe this is my influence from like DJ Hazard type mixing way back when, where it's just like mix, 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 quick, quick. Maybe they'll double drop, and that's my sort of mechanism of what I. But whereas you use the loops and you mess around and you bring stuff back, whereas I never do that. But then again, as you say, it complements each other. It's just like it's
yeah,
like it's like yeah, telepathy, but also kind of healthy competition in the most constructive sense. So
yeah.
it's not like not we're competing, but it's also like right, I'm going to chuck you this now, mate. Let's see how you deal with that. You know,
And I love that. And I think, that's been part of me. That's, as much as like as an editorial person where I've been trying to shout about you to the world for years and years, you've been incredibly beneficial to me in terms of opening up my confidence as a DJ. And
oh,
that's like those block to block sessions, especially that first one, because it was just before I was doing the Three Peaks with Billy Bunter and stuff.
yeah,
So it was it was quite an unusual one. And then we've had some ones. I mean, there was one where I thought that the recording hadn't worked and we'd been kicked off for copyright reasons, where I almost got into quite a diva-ish strop, and I'd had this finale set and you were like, do you want to do the final tunes? Well, I can't be bothered. And in the end I did, and when we got back the recording was fine. There was no copyright issues at
uh,
all. And it was, I mean, the experiences, my favorite experiences are once we come back, because we normally go out and do something else afterwards and come back to yours for a little bit of a set and watch the video. And they've been some of my favorite moments where we kind of watched ourselves back and a little bit critical of certain mixes, but also just like,
yeah,
okay, this is cooler than I even remember it being. Like, we're
yeah.
having fun here. This is wicked.
And in a state of inebriation, think that we're the world's greatest thing that's ever happened to DJing culture, which is But hey, maybe we are, maybe we're not. But it's funny either way.
Yeah,
Amazing.
definitely, definitely. Cool. I mean, there was one other kind of factor which I don't know. I mean, I don't know if you've kind of. I think there's been so many highlights, but I think what has taken us to this, the catalyst from the last EP to this EP, who definitely deserves a shout out, is Machine Woman, right?
Oh wow, yeah, yeah. So yeah, she's yeah. Catalyst is probably the right word, and the can of worms that it has opened. Because as I say, you've been sort of yeah singing my praises and just sort of been shouting from the rooftops about me for a while. But like, I
Only
don't
to my limited audience, isn't it? There's only so
well
many people who follow One More Thing, or so many people.
to a certain degree, yes. And it's like it's not to say that the drum bass thing never took off. I don't want to say that. But like as you know, because you've been closely following me ever since I've really been doing it. It's like and there was the odd glimmer of like I've had Vision radio plays and this and that and but like as soon as it's kind of coming to this other territory, which is anywhere from like 115 BPM all the way up to one. I'm gonna cap it at 150. because when it gets into 160 territory, you're kind of in the jungle DMB territory anyway, so to speak.
Yeah.
But yeah, but then I did this, and then Machine Woman picked up on the "What Have You Done" EP, specifically Fringe Thinking, which was via Dean's Dispersion PR,
Mm.
and
I
then
still
that,
remember the amount of exclamation marks that she put, like, I love this. And it was, I
yeah,
want to hear more music like this. And there was loads of exclamation marks. Like, I want to talk to that person because I don't, not everybody uses that amount of exclamation marks. Like,
yeah,
I love exclamation marks. So it's like, wow,
yeah.
okay. And then we both got in touch with her then saying, like, yo, thank you for the support and stuff. And then she's really taken you under her wing a little bit, hasn't she?
Yeah, we did a bit of mentoring for a bit as well, and like, she gave some really good advice. And she's very switched on. She's very strategic. She's to use the crass term in some people's ears, she's a hustler. She's a proper hustler. Like she's on it, and she's lovely as well. You know, very very straight to the point. But she's very sincere and very really cares as well.
Yeah.
And but as a result of that, because and this is another maybe a sort of lesson to other would be artists, is like, if you feel like nothing's going anywhere, just honestly, I know it's a bit it's a bit cliche, in it, stick with it, keep going, but it really
Don't
is.
stop. Don't stop.
Don't stop, exactly. But like, because as a result of that, and like, these years doing this, and then this slight pivot into this new territory, I don't want to say new because I've been making that sort of music for a while. It's only consciously that I've decided that actually this is going to be the core focus, this kind of left field bass stuff. But that her then tapped into, so she recommended me to Alex Jones, who's one half of Denton Pika, who aren't as active as they were years ago, but he also co-runs Hypercolour, goes by the artist name Reminder. He's a pretty heavyweight guy in the scene,
Mm.
and he's just like, right, this is mental. I communicate with him like all the time via weird, sometimes very weird memes on Instagram. I've never actually met the guy, but we speak like every other day. And I've released on Hypercolour as release of that, and that's led on to other things and opened other doors and portals, like speaking. Again, not met her, but like quite in Chloe Robinson's, consciousness in terms of like music,
Brilliant.
which is amazing. Like she's played some of my music on a boiler room it was a boiler room in India. She played. I don't know which one she played, but point being, it's like just sort of from you supporting me and just like doing this EP. It's just like, yeah, if it gets into the ears of the right people, and there was like Alex had told me like he was, I don't want to say too much because I don't know how valid it's going to be, but there's certain things going on in the background with Maya Jane Coles, and just really cool stuff is happening as a result of from What Have You Done EP, which was September, your birthday, all the way up until now. It's almost like I've got a kind of like, I'm getting quite a lot of radio show. Yeah, so lots of things are happening and bubbling away. Really, really, really cool stuff. But
Which is why we've moved Flesh forward. Why we've moved Flesh
it's just,
forward like by 6 months, really, because this
yeah,
otherwise wasn't going to come out until at least September, probably more like October.
yeah. It's
But
probably
it was
fine.
just like,
Yeah, there was like a gap, isn't there, in your release schedule? It's just like, well, I've got this music, it's ready to go. I can whip some artwork up pretty quickly. Let's just do it. Let's just sort of, thrash it out there into the world. And it's just,
yeah.
yeah,
And I think for transparency, it was because I put everything into the Lakeway album and I had these releases all lined up afterwards, but I hadn't actually done anything with them. And then suddenly, once the Lakeway album was ready to drop, it's like, what's next? Literally nothing, just loads of ideas on a spreadsheet. And yours was the first, and the momentum and the energy and stuff. It's like, this is what I love. That I love the flexibility of running a label in that way. It's like, this is ready
yeah,
to go. There were people listening, people, your name is on more and more people's lips. And I think, like, to wrap up and to keep it within just about the right amount of kind of time,
yeah.
that I'd hope this would be, and to keep it as a nice kind of succinct interview, which I think it is. There's a lot for people to take from it
Oh, yeah.
inspirationally. Is that
I hope so.
it's a marathon. It is a
Oh, wow.
marathon, and the pair of us are on our marathons. I mean, you are a runner anyway. I used to be a runner until I tore my Achilles, and it opened up a whole other world of back pain. So I don't run anymore, but I love that, that endurance. That it's about the process, it's about the journey, it's about what happens on that journey, And there's always new things to accomplish on that journey, and that journey is never ending. That journey is never ending until we die. Like if you're
Yeah.
a real creative individual and you buzz off this shit, then there is no retirement. This is just going to be something, you take it more and seriously or differently on different levels at different stages of your life. You're never going to stop creating. You're never going to want to stop putting things out into the universe. And this is the long journey so far, really, isn't it?
Yeah, 100%. And I guess it's like, it's not to, be like a cynical with painful truths, but it's also just a bit of a, kind of word of caution to upcoming or maybe younger artists. It's just like, don't just expect miracles are going to happen after your first release. And it's just like, this is a long journey. And, a lot of people in it, myself included, have like day jobs and other things going on, and like side ventures to support. I do want to live a life at the same time as doing all this cool stuff. Um, but yeah, so it's just like don't get disheartened when, as we were sort of talking about earlier, it's just like okay, when we were referring to release day, and
Mm.
like that's going to happen. There might be some things that just you feel are a bit dead, but it's all part of the endurance and part of the journey. And you might release, you might put a post out that you've put like 4 hours effort in and three people like it or whatever. So what? Just keep doing it. It's never be afraid to be seen trying was a saying that stuck with me. Um,
Yes, yes, and I love that because it is now because everything we just see the final thing. And this is something I tell my daughter when she's looking at this beautiful painting and she's trying to replicate it, and she's not quite getting it right because the tiny little smudge is like, yeah, but that person who's painted that painting on YouTube has been doing this for years. This is one of the first times you've tried to do this style. Like
yeah,
you're never going to get that. We only ever see the perfect thing, and I think that kind of that journey and the mistakes that we make and the little kind of things which make us human like a
yeah,
little slip up in a mix or like a slightly weird mix down. Some of the biggest tracks of all time don't have the best mix downs, but they've got a vibe, and that's why people love them. And they'll work their own way around the things which don't quite hit the standard benchmarks because it's not about that. It's about the vibe instead, really. And I love that. Yeah, never be afraid to see people see you trying. I think that's the whole that's been the trajectory of my career. So
yeah. Well, exactly. It's profound in a way, but it's just because at the end
yeah.
of the day, it's the fear of being, it's the fear of perfection, isn't it? No, it's the fear of wanting to be seen perfect. So I think if you're really aiming for perfection all the time, it's going to fall flat on its backside.
You're,
I think.
yeah, you're in for a bad time. You're only ever going to be disappointed in that way, really, aren't you? Or just let yourself down and have the wrong expectations of yourself. And
Yeah,
it's kind of missing the point then, really, because there's so much fun to be had in between and as you're learning. And I think I will wrap up because when I didn't know if this was going to be in your highlights of our journey so far, but there was a particular moment after, it was after one of the block to blocks. I think I'd played, I think it was when I played,
rebellion.
yes, and then in the morning after, when I was waiting for my train, we went to the pub for a couple of pints and started sitting down and writing
Right,
comedy.
comedy.
Yeah, and I mean, there's some of those ideas. I said one or two of those sketches I think of every single day, and they make me smile. And I've since, there are other artists who I speak to who are also interested in that. And there are people out there. I mean, literally this week I was involved in filming a horror with the
Yeah,
boys from Neuroheads and Audio. There are some really cool people out there who are doing some fucking wicked content, which goes way beyond the music,
yeah,
and yourself included there. And these are the things that really excite me about the way that we're moving forward. I mean, we kind of start in drum and bass or start in a certain genre, but who knows where that's going to go and what that's going to lead to. And I
mhm.
think that's what excites me about mine and your friendship is that, we're kind of bonded through this kind of creative spirit, which is not bounded to any medium or any genre or anything, whether that's kind of writing articles, writing comedy, making tunes. Me and you've made tunes together and little edits
Yeah.
together and stuff like that. Like I'm not a
Which
producer,
which sketch
but
out of curiosity was that? Just that.
mm,
Which sketch sticks with you?
oh,
Like,
it's the you want some like that of the naked, the naked dude. And the
Yeah,
denim one as well. The denim one. I mean, there's been times where I thought about going on ChatGPT and starting to use AI to actually make the kind of things that I've envisioned.
yeah,
But a few of those, like the naked person, and there's so many times where I do just want to break up a normal kind of, I'm having a very boring conversation with a relative, or I don't know, I haven't spoken to a bank manager or something like
teams
that,
chat,
a
business chat.
neighbor or a builder or something like that. And all I want to do is just take my top off and go, do you want some? And then carry on as if that's never happened. And these obtrusive thoughts can get really, really loud. But yeah, and these like I've never sat down with someone and just tried to make each other laugh in that type of way.
That
Like,
was amazing, wasn't it? That was funny.
yeah, who knows where that's going to lead to? There are loads of other great, exciting projects, either that we're working on together or that you're working on, with the other people that you're really closely affiliated with, and loads of amazing doors are about the, are opening, like you mentioned, now the production work and stuff. So yeah, I just want to kind of wrap this up now and tell everybody that Flesh is out there now. Scartip is here forever, and he's making some really amazing music creations, like putting out
Yeah,
just an amazing vibe of all different kind of styles. And expect the unexpected. Please support this EP, but most
yeah.
importantly, keep an eye on what Michael is doing. There you go. I'm finishing the interview with Michael as well.
Michael, yeah.
You've had all your Michaels now for the next year. Like I'm only going to call you Tippy now for the rest of 2025.
Yeah,
But please keep an eye on Scartip, because there's something that I've felt since 2017, and I think it's becoming more and more apparent. You're a cool fucking dude.
yeah, nice one. No, I appreciate it, Dave, and all the support. It's always appreciated. And thank you for anyone who's watched this whole thing. If you managed to stick with us, and if
Yeah.
you supported the EP and supported my music, and yeah, I
We'll
was
fuck
going
off and let you have a
to.
bath now. We'll let you to actually do some cleaning and scrub yourself.
Yeah, I'm actually freezing. I've been trying to like not shiver because the window we can't. Me and Meg have just moved into a new place. I can't shut this window properly, so I'm absolutely bolted. So yeah, good
The things
timing.
we do for our art, man.
Yeah,
Peace.
yeah,
Brilliant. Thank you, Scartip, and thank you to everybody who's watched. We'll see you soon. There we
yeah.
go. That's brilliant.